He left me for a rich woman and laughed in my face. I thought my world was over. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lena, I'm 33, and I've been a nurse in Ohio for over 10 years. I loved my job, I loved my life, and I loved my husband, or at least, I thought I did. His name is Gabe, 36, charming, smart, and handsome. When we first met, I believed he was my forever. We laughed together, shared dreams, and built what I thought was a strong marriage. But slowly, things began to change. He started coming home late, making excuses, and always looking distracted. I tried talking to him, tried saving what we had, but he brushed me off. I never suspected that he had been seeing someone else behind my back. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. Gabe told me he was leaving me, for a wealthy woman named Maris. He didn't just leave, he mocked me. He said I could never give him the life she could. He laughed while saying it, like my feelings and our years together didn't matter at all. I felt frozen, shocked, and humiliated. My heart broke in a way I never thought possible. I packed a few things, left our shared home, and felt completely alone. But as painful as it was, I knew I had to keep going. I had to survive, and somehow, I had to find a way to reclaim my life. At that moment, I couldn't see it, but this betrayal would set the stage for something I never imagined. Something that would change everything, my health, my future, and even the way Gabe would remember me. When I look back at my life with Gabe, it all seemed so perfect at first. We were young, full of energy and hope, and everything felt like it could last forever. We dreamed together, talking late into the night about trips we would take, a house we would buy, and the family we might have someday. He would hold my hand, make me laugh, and tell me I was the only one for him. I believed every word. Slowly, I noticed subtle changes. Gabe stopped sharing his thoughts with me. He seemed distracted, often checking his phone or disappearing for hours without explanation. At first, I thought he was stressed with work, and I tried to support him, listening patiently and giving him space. I never imagined the truth. He began spending time with Maris, a woman far older than me, confident, and dripping with wealth. I didn't know about her at first. Gabe would tell me he had late meetings or business trips, and I trusted him. I convinced myself that things were just hard, that love wasn't always easy, and that maybe this distance was temporary. I even tried to make our relationship stronger, planning surprises, cooking his favorite meals, and finding little ways to bring us closer. Yet, the warmth in his eyes faded, and the laughter we once shared felt forced. I couldn't figure out why. The worst part was how normal everything seemed on the surface. Gabe acted like nothing had changed, smiled at me in public, and maintained the image of a happy husband. But behind closed doors, the love I thought we had was slipping away. He was building another life with Maris, one I didn't even know existed, while I struggled to understand the coldness creeping into our home. Looking back now, I realize the warning signs were there all along. The late nights, the distant looks, the unexplained absences, they were pieces of a puzzle I didn't know how to solve. I was blindsided by his betrayal, never imagining that the man I loved so deeply could slowly, quietly, be leaving me for someone else. I never expected that one conversation could shatter my entire world. One evening, Gabe came home, and I could feel something different in the air. There was a coldness in his tone, a confidence I hadn't seen before. He looked at me, smirked, and said words I will never forget, "I'm leaving you, for someone who can actually give me the life you never could." It was as if the floor disappeared beneath me. I froze, my heart racing, my mind unable to form a single coherent thought. I tried to speak, to reason, to make him see how much we had shared, but he just laughed and shook his head. He didn't hesitate, didn't apologize, he mocked me, my dreams, everything we had built together. I felt humiliated. Every memory, every promise, every late-night conversation suddenly seemed like lies. I had trusted him completely, opened my heart fully, and now he was throwing it all away, as if it had no value. I could barely recognize the man I had loved. In that moment, I realized how alone I was. My parents were miles away and couldn't understand. Friends offered sympathy, but none of them could truly take away the pain or the shame I felt. I felt abandoned, blindsided by a betrayal I hadn't even seen coming. Tears came, but even they felt inadequate for the depth of the hurt. The home that had once felt safe now seemed like a cage of broken trust and shattered dreams. Every room reminded me of him, of what I had lost, and of how cruelly he had dismissed everything we shared. For the first time, I felt entirely powerless, stripped of security, love, and hope. The life I had imagined, the life I thought I was building alongside him, vanished in one merciless moment. And yet, even as the grief consumed me, a tiny spark of determination began to flicker. I didn't know it yet, but this betrayal would set the stage for a transformation I couldn't have imagined, one that would change not only me but the man who had thought he could break me without consequence. After Gabe left, I had no choice but to find my own space. I rented a small apartment far from the neighborhood we had shared. The walls were bare, the rooms echoing with silence, and every step reminded me that I was starting over completely alone. It was terrifying, but I knew I had to keep moving. Money became an immediate worry. Without his support, I had to cover rent, utilities, and daily expenses on my own. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, sometimes working 12, even 14 hours straight. My body ached, but the exhaustion was nothing compared to the constant ache in my chest. At home, I would collapse on the couch, staring at the ceiling, forcing myself not to think about him or the life I had lost. I avoided friends and family as much as I could. Every time someone asked how I was, I felt a flash of shame and anger. I didn't want their pity, their questions, or their judgment. I learned to carry my heartbreak silently, like a heavy cloak I could never remove. The world outside my apartment went on, oblivious to my pain, and that solitude became both my prison and my refuge. Yet, amid the sorrow, something inside me began to stir. Small acts of independence gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. I learned to cook for myself, manage bills I had never handled before, and make decisions without waiting for someone else. Each day, even when I cried alone, I discovered a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit by the window, watching the city lights and thinking about the woman who had taken my life from me. But instead of giving in to bitterness, I promised myself that I would survive, not for revenge yet, but to prove to myself that I was stronger than I had ever believed. This period of struggle, though painful, began shaping me into someone unbreakable. I realized that strength isn't always loud, sometimes it's quiet, forged in the moments no one else sees, in the nights filled with tears, and in the determination to keep going even when the world feels like it's against you. A few months after moving into my apartment, I scheduled a routine checkup. I had been feeling slightly off, tired in ways that didn't match my long shifts, minor aches I ignored, and occasional dizzy spells. I thought it was just stress or exhaustion, the remnants of everything that had happened. I never expected what the doctor would tell me. Dr. Harper, a calm and patient woman, ran a series of tests. After a quiet pause, she looked at me and said something I wasn't ready to hear. I had a rare medical condition, something most people never experience. It was treatable, but it required careful attention, ongoing monitoring, and a lifestyle that demanded dedication. She explained the steps I needed to take, the medications, and the schedule for follow-up appointments. At first, fear gripped me. I imagined every worst-case scenario, my mind spinning with questions about my future, my health, and whether I could handle the changes. For a moment, I felt vulnerable and small, like a part of my independence was slipping away. But then, an unexpected feeling emerged alongside the fear. I realized that this condition didn't define me, it was something I could face head-on. I had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and months of living alone while rebuilding my life. I could handle this, too. The thought of taking control of my health, of managing a challenge that demanded focus and resilience, ignited a strange empowerment I hadn't anticipated. I thought about Gabe. For all his charm and wealth, he would never have cared enough to confront something like this with patience or strength. He thrived on comfort, status, and easy victories. I, on the other hand, had been forced to grow, adapt, and face difficulties without anyone holding my hand. This was my life, my challenge, and my opportunity to prove to myself that I could survive anything. Walking out of the clinic that day, I felt a quiet determination. Fear and empowerment coexisted in a way that made me stronger, sharper, and more aware of my own power. I knew that, no matter what came next, I had already proven that I could rise from despair and take control of my future, on my own terms. After coming to terms with my health situation, I realized I needed more than recovery, I needed independence. For years, Gabe had handled finances, made investments, and managed almost every aspect of our money. I had no idea what he did behind the scenes, and I certainly didn't know about his hidden priorities. But I had my own savings tucked away, quietly earned from overtime, bonuses, and careful planning. That money became my secret weapon. I spent weeks researching opportunities, reading everything I could about small business ventures. I wanted something tangible, something that could grow steadily without relying on anyone else. That's when I discovered property flipping, a way to invest in homes, improve them, and sell for a profit. It wasn't glamorous, but it promised independence and control, which I craved more than luxury or attention. I started small, buying a modest property in a neighborhood on the rise. I handled everything myself, the negotiations, the renovations, the appointments with contractors, even painting walls when needed. Every decision I made, every obstacle I overcame, gave me a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. The money I earned from flipping the first property was more than I expected. It wasn't just about the cash, it was about reclaiming control over my life. As my confidence grew, I realized that I didn't need to prove anything to Gabe. He had left, thinking I was fragile and dependent, but here I was, quietly building something he could never touch or control. The empowerment wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense, it was about creating a life he had tried to deny me. I also discovered a surprising joy in learning new skills, understanding market trends, coordinating renovations, and seeing potential where others saw problems. Each completed project felt like a personal victory, a quiet statement that I was capable of more than anyone had given me credit for, including myself. By the time I completed my third property, I had transformed my savings into a sustainable, growing business. I was financially independent, confident, and fully aware that my life was finally my own, and no one could take that away. Through the grapevine, I began hearing about Gabe's new life. People I knew mentioned seeing him at exclusive events, arriving in sleek, expensive cars, always with Maris by his side. Every detail painted a picture of extravagance, designer clothes, lavish dinners, and parties filled with laughter that I was never part of. The way he carried himself, confident, untouchable, almost smug, made it clear he was proud of what he had taken. At first, I felt a sting of jealousy, a pang that I wasn't going to lie about. But it was fleeting, replaced quickly by something stronger, clarity. Gabe's victories were hollow. He surrounded himself with wealth and status, yet I could sense the emptiness in what I heard. There was no substance, no accomplishment beyond material gain. He had built a life that looked impressive to outsiders, but it lacked meaning, connection, and integrity, the very things he had once dismissed in me. I couldn't help but compare it silently to my own life. While he was showing off, I was building real stability. Every property I completed, every client I helped, and every challenge I overcame was a quiet testament to my resilience. I didn't need an audience to validate my success. Unlike Gabe, I was creating something enduring, something that gave me purpose and pride beyond appearances. Hearing about his arrogance through others became almost surreal. People told me about his boastful comments, the way he subtly bragged about his wealth, and how he seemed to enjoy reminding the world of his superior choices. It was almost comical, seeing someone so convinced of their own triumph while missing the bigger picture entirely. That's when I realized the contrast between us couldn't be sharper. He relied on superficial displays and Maris' fortune to feel important. I relied on myself, my intelligence, and my determination. He had chosen what he thought was the easy route, and it would never test him the way life had tested me. Every time I thought about it, a quiet satisfaction settled in me. He might have taken my past, but he couldn't take the future I was creating, and that was a victory he would never see coming. Over time, the efforts I had quietly poured into my property business began to show results. Each project sold faster than I expected, and the profits grew steadily. I felt a sense of achievement I hadn't known I was capable of. For the first time in months, I woke up excited about the day ahead, rather than dreading another lonely evening. As my confidence increased, I found ways to help others along the way. A few former colleagues had been taken advantage of in their own work or mistreated by partners who didn't respect them. I offered advice, shared resources, and guided them through challenges, ensuring they regained their footing. It was deeply fulfilling to see them succeed, knowing that my support had made a real difference in their lives. This phase of my life wasn't about revenge or showing off, it was about reclaiming a sense of purpose. Every task I completed, every person I helped, and every decision I made reinforced the idea that I could thrive on my own. I felt proud not because I had something flashy to display, but because I had built something meaningful from nothing, proving to myself that I was capable of far more than anyone, including Gabe, had believed. Financially, I was secure for the first time in my adult life. I no longer depended on anyone, and the freedom that brought was exhilarating. I could make choices without compromise, pursue opportunities that interested me, and live without fear of judgment or interference. My sense of self-worth, long buried under betrayal and heartbreak, returned stronger than ever. Emotionally, I felt lighter. The anger and sadness that had consumed me gradually transformed into determination and clarity. I no longer dwelled on what Gabe had taken or who he was with. Instead, I focused on what I could achieve, who I could help, and the life I wanted to lead. Through it all, I discovered that true success isn't measured by luxury or recognition, it's measured by growth, independence, and the ability to stand tall after being knocked down. I had rebuilt myself, quietly and steadily, without a single confrontation, and it felt more powerful than anything I could have imagined. Months after learning to manage my condition, I returned to the clinic for a follow-up. The doctor's news was more than I could have hoped for. My condition was now fully treatable. With proper care and diligence, I could live a normal, healthy life without constant worry. Relief washed over me like sunlight breaking through a storm. For the first time, I felt free, truly free, from the shadow that had loomed over me for so long. A few weeks later, I attended a professional networking event for property developers. I had built a reputation quietly but steadily, and opportunities were beginning to come my way. I walked through the room with confidence, noticing the sense of pride and accomplishment I carried. I was fully aware of how far I had come, both in my career and in my personal life. And then, I saw him. Gabe. Standing across the room, dressed impeccably but with a hint of tension in his posture. He hadn't expected to see me there, thriving and composed, radiating self-assurance. His eyes widened as he registered my presence. The confident, untouchable man I had once known looked unsteady, almost unrecognizable. I realized he was facing challenges I had never known, setbacks that I had long since moved past. Rumors whispered about his financial struggles and the cracks in the life he had built with Maris. For years, he had flaunted a life of luxury, but now he was confronted with the stark contrast between appearances and reality. Meanwhile, I stood strong, a woman who had weathered heartbreak, illness, and betrayal, and emerged with purpose, clarity, and independence. In that brief moment, I understood the depth of my transformation. No words were exchanged, no confrontations were necessary. The room's hum faded around us, and all that remained was the undeniable truth: I had taken control of my life, rebuilt it from the ground up, and had become someone unshakable. Gabe may have left me thinking he had won, but life had delivered the ultimate twist. And I was the one who was truly victorious. Sitting in my office one evening, I finally allowed myself to reflect on everything I had endured. Betrayal had cut deep, leaving scars I never thought would heal. Heartbreak had felt endless, and at times, I had wondered if I would ever feel whole again. Yet, looking around at the life I had built, I understood something important: survival alone was not enough. True strength came from transformation. I thought about revenge, not the kind that causes pain or humiliation, but the kind that restores dignity and independence. For years, I had let others define my worth, but I refused to continue doing so. I learned that the most powerful response to betrayal is to focus on oneself, to cultivate resilience, and to create a life that no one could ever undermine. Every property I completed, every person I helped, every challenge I overcame reinforced the truth that my life belonged to me. Happiness returned in quiet ways. I no longer measured success by external approval or superficial validation. I celebrated personal milestones, enjoyed moments of solitude, and discovered passions I had never explored before. I was no longer chasing someone else's standards or approval, I was living by my own. Independence became my foundation, and with it came a profound sense of peace. I also realized that the pain I had endured had shaped me into someone stronger than I could have imagined. The heartbreak, disappointment, and obstacles were not punishments, they were lessons, building the person I was becoming. I had learned patience, strategy, and perseverance. I had learned that my voice mattered, my choices mattered, and my happiness mattered. Looking back on Gabe, I felt no desire for confrontation or retaliation. What mattered was that I had reclaimed my life entirely. I had grown, healed, and thrived in ways he could never imagine. The true victory was mine, not in what he lost, but in what I gained. And as I sit here now, I can say this with certainty: the best revenge isn't hurting the person who wronged you. The best revenge is living a life they can never touch, a life full of freedom, strength, and joy. That life is mine, and nothing will ever take it away. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from Gabe, or should I have tried to forgive him? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. If you want more stories like mine, subscribe and turn on notifications.